Welcome, everybody. We will get started in just a few moments. All right. Well, as you come in, if you want to say hi in the chat, let us know maybe where you're listening in from. We would love to see that. And while you guys are doing that, we will jump in. So today we are walking through starting our new year in personnel. Excuse me. And before we dive in, let's go through some of our housekeeping here. So Matt is here with us. He will be my partner in crime for our webinar today, and he will be monitoring our chat and our QA as well. So feel free as you are hopping in to throw something in the chat, say hi. If you have questions though, please throw those in the Q&A. So that is where we really love to see our questions, because that is an easier place for us to respond to them and make sure we don't lose track of what questions are being asked. But we definitely love interaction via the webinar chat. If you are seeing something that makes sense or that you've used, or if you want to just comment on our random conversations, feel free. We love that. So we do have support for closed captions turned on, and this is a diverse group of Martus users. So just be aware that for the most part, what we're talking about today, all stuff that most people at the plus or higher level have, but we'll talk about a few things that are specific to some of those higher tiers. So I will point those out as we get to them. And we will send out the recording for this. So that's always a frequently asked question. We will send that out hopefully tomorrow or Thursday at the latest. And that will hit your inbox, as they are always also posted on our knowledge base in the webinar section. So if you search for Watch Me Work, you'll find those. And we keep those videos updated each time we do one of these. So that's another great resource for you as well, in case you missed last week's Watch Me Work. All right, so where are we headed? We're going to work through updating our settings and pay types and making sure all of our prerequisites are met before we jump into creating our scenario. We're also going to update our employees, and then we're going to actually copy the scenario into our new year. Then we'll update positions. And I do want to give a little bit of a caveat here that this is really a training that is focused on how do you move from 1 year of personnel scenarios to the next. If you are not yet fully implemented in Martus, this may be a little bit quick for you, but it's still great learning. You will definitely learn how to navigate the system and learn a little bit more about how personnel works. All right, so let's jump in, and we are going to hop right into Martus. And I also have here our knowledge base article. This is really a helpful resource for you if you're trying to do this on your own. Now, I do want to remind everybody that we also offer our budget refresher as a part of your support plan in Martus. And we would love to get on a call with you and help you set up not only your next year's budget, but also your personnel scenario, and make sure that you're all squared away. So if you want to take advantage of that as one of our customers, reach out to your support team and they will set that up for you. All right. So we do have a prerequisites here for our new year in personnel. And the first step is to ensure we have a planner budget. So Matt, what does this mean in Martus? Where would we go to figure this out?
We would want to go to planner setup, and that's where we can see what defaults we might have and change those settings if we need to.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm going to navigate to planner setup here in the planner section. Notice a couple things here. We are currently on the 2026 year. We're going to actually build our scenario though for 2025. So I'm going to go look and see what's in my 2025 year. And we can see here that we have our 2025 budget and it's set as our planner default. So this is the key piece right here that we are wanting to double check and make sure that it is set. So just having a budget here isn't enough for personnel. Personnel needs to know which budget you're planning on actually budgeting in, as personnel is going to attempt to help you make sure that all of the positions you add where you're booking them actually exist in a budget. So personnel is really trying to help you. Although if you miss this step, personnel will just yell at you with a bunch of errors and you will be very confused. So this is a very important step to make sure that you have the right budget year and that you have that budget set as your planner default. A lot of times people will go in, they'll create the budget, they'll forget to come back in and actually set it as the planner default. All right, our next step here in our prerequisites is to update our employees. Now, technically, this one is optional within our personnel budgeting, and because you could do it after you copy your scenario, but I kind of like doing it before. That way I know everything is ready to go. One of the things to remember about Martus and personnel is that Martus is position-based, not employee-based. And that's a really, really important distinction within our personnel module. So we're going to have employees in Martus if they've ever been a part of the organization. We're not going to delete employees. As a matter of fact, while we do have a delete button, Martus isn't going to allow me to actually delete an employee because it's going to tell me that that employee is used in a previous year's scenario. And what that's doing is it's protecting that historical data that you will have in Martus, because you don't necessarily want to remove people from previous scenarios. But you may be thinking, well, Melissa, what do I do if I want, somebody has left our organization? And so the answer to that is we just come in and we can either click on edit here, or we can click the select box here and we can mark this employee as inactive. We'll then see that in our scenario as we're editing positions that that person is inactive, meaning they're no longer with the organization and we should replace them with either our placeholder vacant employee or with the person who has replaced them in our organization. So let's go ahead and inactivate Taylor here, and I'm going to hit OK. Now I can also add new employees and indicate their first, last name, as well as their payroll system ID. This is helpful if I ever want to do a VLOOKUP with my payroll system exports and import them into Martus. Now I can assign the anniversary date. We use that for some of our calculations. And then our coverage 1 and coverage 2, which are usually keyed to your medical insurance and then your dental vision. So depending on how your system's been set up, your main thing is you want to make sure that you fill out whatever fields are filled out for the rest of your employees. That's always a good rule of thumb. We can import or export this template and re-import it. So if you have a lot of employees you need to add, you can do that via export, import, and I'll show you that in a bit. So now that we've looked at our employees, our next step here is to update our pay types. So there's a couple things that we want to be aware of. We want to look for any start dates that are in the past or not for the next fiscal year. Then we may need to update any of our default amounts. So I'm going to come back over to Martus and I'm going to go over to my pay types. Now, earlier today, we changed a couple of our bonuses. Rather than having an explicit start date here, which was what we had before, we instead have told Martus to just book it in December. So now we don't have to worry about changing that start date anymore. It was set up like this, where it was once and it was on a December date, but that means that every year I have to go in and change it. So we changed that to month. And we're using this tiers option here for the fiscal month, which allows us to indicate the month that we want and the regular amount. This can also be used for pay types where you want to budget them quarterly or even every other month, where you can enter all the months where you want to budget that and assign them as needed. So, Matt, I know that's one that you've used before, right?
Yes, I like the fiscal month option because you can pick from any months of the year. So whether it's once a year, twice a year, quarterly, gives you that flexibility.
Yeah, it's a nice option. And I think we often forget that it exists. But all right, I'm going to hit cancel because I didn't actually make any changes on that. The other thing we want to double check is what our insurance is being calculated at. So this is something that often changes year over year, or your medical insurance rates may change. Now, Matt, I'm going to change these numbers. Is that going to affect anything in my current scenarios?
It will not.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to increase all of these by $100. It's only going to affect scenarios if I go in to those scenarios and explicitly tell Martus to recalculate it. So all of our historical data is staying intact. And even if we had other scenarios in this current year and we had come in and changed it, those would also not update until we went in and changed it. So same things on our employees page. If we change their coverage level or we mark them inactive, nothing changes as far as how things are calculated in Martus until you explicitly tell Martus to recalculate those items. So I'm going to hit save on here so that we do save those changes, and everything else we're going to say looks good. Now I do want to point out here that we are budgeting, I don't really actually want to drag and drop that. We are budgeting our Social Security and our Medicare FICA tax right here. That's going to be important in a little bit when we jump over to our config tab. So let me show you here. Our next one is to update the scenario configuration. So I'm going to come over to our scenario, and then I'm going to come over to our config tab. And what we're going to do is we are going to take a look here. And so what we did is we went to scenarios here and we went over to the config tab. So we want to actually update 2025, but it's always best practice to kind of look and see what is configured for 2024. So we can see here that 2024, we have our first payroll date in our fiscal year for weekly or biweekly pay types and biweekly pay types, which essentially means that if we're using that calculated pay type, Martus is going to know where to start in the year. Notice that our FICA rate and FICA account are blank. That's important because we have that in our pay type. So we just saw that in our pay type, so we don't want to put it here. Matt, what would happen if I also filled out these fields here?
You would double count your payroll taxes, and I'm sure you don't want to do that.
No, we don't need to pay extra taxes. So we will leave those blank because we're already calculating them via our pay type. So what we're going to do is we are going to go to 2025 and click load. And I'm going to go ahead and click here to set as 2025. Now, this is one of those few features that if you have the standard edition of Martus rather than the plus, you aren't going to see that button. And that's because by setting our default personnel year, we are controlling which year our non-admin users are seeing by default. So we have changed this to 2025 and it will be our default as well when we come into our scenarios. So I'm going to fill out our fields that we had previously filled out. I'll just choose the same date. And then even though this field down here wasn't filled out before, I'm going to go ahead and fill it out. And what this is going to allow Martus to calculate how many hours per month an FTE is working. So if somebody is full-time, we would consider that usually 40 hours a week. So 40 hours a week times 52 weeks divided by 12 months is 173.33. And if you just got lost in the math on there, it's right here so that you can figure out exactly what number you need to be able to put in there for you. So it doesn't affect the dollars that we're budgeting at all. It just allows us to have a clearer picture of how many hours our FTEs are working across our different departments or dimensions. So I'm going to go ahead and click save on this. And now we have made it through our prerequisites for starting a new year. So now I could click on this and we could create our new year personnel scenario. But we're going to just go ahead and do that all on our own here. So notice that now I am in the year of 2025. This is important. You want to make sure that you're in the right year when you copy your scenario, because whatever year you're currently looking at on the screen, whatever year is up here in the top, that's the year the scenario is going to be created in. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here and I'm going to copy my scenario. So I'm going to choose my 2024 base scenario and I'm going to create my 2025 base scenario. I'm not going to include my monthly details. I really want to pull over what I would consider our starting rates or our base rates rather than anything that may have been layered on top of that via the details screen. So I'm going to go ahead and click on copy scenario. We're going to click on view task progress and see if we by chance have all success messages here. And this is a really important step, especially for personnel. You really want to see this success message. And if you don't see the full green success message, make sure you actually read the errors because this is essentially a multi-step copy process on the back end of Martus. You can get errors in various places. And so those errors will really tell you where to go to look to solve the problem. If you can't figure it out, please email support and just let us know. We are experts in these errors, right, Matt? We're pretty good at untangling them usually.
Yeah, I think we've seen pretty much all the errors you can get.
Yeah. So at least don't spend more than 5 to 15 minutes trying to figure it out. If you can't figure it out, let us know. Send in a ticket to your support representative and they will assist. So, but you can see we did everything we needed to do. So we got everything imported. So the first thing we're going to talk about here is I'm going to come back to my scenario and I'm just going to click on scenarios again. And so now we have our scenario. Now, Matt, I know we talked about this morning, but it sounds like you, like I did, used to panic when you got here and you couldn't find your tabs. How do we get our tabs?
We get our tabs by choosing a scenario to work with, which we do by clicking that blue Set as Current button, because we may have multiple scenarios in a given year.
Yeah, exactly. So this is one of those things, and this is actually the Set as Default button as well for our Plus and higher customers will be the scenario that your non-admin users can view if you've given them access to personnel. But everybody has this set as current button, so I'm going to click that. And once I do, that button goes away and it just says, hey, this scenario is selected. And then at the top, we have all of our tabs. So this is really where we're going to do the vast majority of the edits and updating in Martus for our personnel scenario, unless we're doing it via export import. The other thing this just did is it gave us these boxes down here to export and import. So to export our pay data file, that one's going to be where we're going to update our employees and our positions. I click right here on export pay data file. Then we will pull that file open here and we will wait for my machine to open that back up. And you'll notice that this is a multi-tabbed file. So anytime you have a multi-tabbed file in Martus is always going to process one tab at a time, and it's expecting that you don't change the tab names. So when we import the pay data file, it's looking for any of these tabs within your file, and it's going to import any that it finds. If it finds other random tabs that you've added, maybe for calculations, it's going to ignore those. You don't have to delete those. The other thing that's important to note with our multi-tabbed files is that you only have to import the tabs that you need. So for example, we're not going to change our coverages here, so I can delete this tab. When I import this, Martus is just going to ignore the coverages in Martus, and it's just going to add or update the records the tabs that we have left. Now, this first tab now is our employees tab. This is where we can mark employees as inactive if needed. We just set that false to true. We can also add new employees here. We're going to mark that as inactive and we're going to add our employee ID. Then we can also add the month of her start date and her coverage level. All right. We don't fill out this column in column A because this is the Martus ID. So this is the ID that Martus is using on the back end to keep track of who's who and how everything is connected. So you just leave that blank. Martus will fill that in when you import. So that's an easy way to add a bunch of employees in because you often have their first and last name and their payroll system ID, their start date, and their employee coverages, and you can just copy and paste that from your payroll system. Now, these 4 tabs here, your rates, rate tiers, pay types, and pay type relationships, we don't normally recommend updating here in your file. That's because these are connected very specific ways, and we don't want to break them. So it's best just to do that in Martus. If you do have a lot of pay types and you feel like you need to make some bulk changes in Excel, reach out to our support team. We'd be happy to walk you through kind of the do's and don'ts of that. And we have our position types. This is just a way to organize our positions. Config and scenario you can see here are pretty basic, so we're just going to blow those away. We don't need to adjust those in our Excel file here. What we're really trying to get to is this tab here, which is our positions. All right. And this is where we can add or edit additional positions. So this employee record is always going to be the payroll system ID, first name and last name. I highly recommend you fill that out via a formula, looking at the employee record so it all matches. And Matt, what is our latest enhancement with those formulas that make life so much easier here?
Good question.
I kind of sprung it on you. I also asked it
Are
really
you
weird.
saying that we don't need to copy and paste values?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
I know I asked it a really weird way, but yes, if you're using a formula to look something up in prior years when you were loading your personnel data, you did need to copy all of those values and paste them as plain text or basic values. Now you don't need to do that. You can actually leave the formulas in the column in Martus and import it, and Martus will read that as the actual what you're seeing on your screen, not as the formula ID. So that's a really nice feature so that as you're working through the file, you don't have to keep rewriting your formulas because you have to take them out to import. All right. Then the next thing that I want to draw your attention to on this file is our ID and position name. We don't ever need to change that in this file. Simply change the title here in column C, and when you import it, Martus will update the Martus ID and the position name. So you don't ever have to change that in this file. But normally when we're using this file, we're really using it to add new positions. All right, so the last thing I want to point out here is our sheet dimensions and line dimensions. So this is the home or base area that we are budgeting the position to. Now, this is important because this is another place where we may run into errors, especially on import. If we try to book somebody to a worksheet that doesn't exist in Martus, we're going to get an error. So sometimes that happens because we've copied down a value and Excel does the, adding one to each value as you go down. Sometimes that happens just because, oh, we didn't realize we didn't have a worksheet set up for that. And we'll talk about that in a little bit more. All that to say, your sheet dim 1 and sheet dim 2, those are important to make sure that you have correct and those values actually exist. And there's a worksheet for them. All right, so that's our file. And once we're done with that, we can import it right here via the choose file option. Then if we want to adjust our pay items, we can export this pay item grid. And I'm not going to spend too much time on this because I want to show you how to do this in Martus. Because for some of us who haven't touched personnel in a year, we do have a relatively new in the whole scheme of things way to do this in Martus. So you can see we have our hours and our hourly pay, our salary pay column, and then we have all these zeros. And in this file, those zeros stand for check marks, meaning that that person has that pay type. All right. So we're not going to spend too much time on this file, but it is here. And if you do have a lot of employees and you're trying to update their new year, their salaries, including maybe last year's cost of living increase or merit raise or anything like that, this is a great way to do it via Excel. One of the things to be aware of in this file is that you never want to adjust these first three columns in this file. You also don't want to make any changes to the title or employee name in Martus while you're working on this file. So between the time you export it from Martus and import it from Martus, you don't want to change the title or employee on your positions either in Martus or in this file because it's really easy to get things to mismatch when you do that. All right, so I'm going to hit save on this one and I'm just going to show you where we import it. So notice that we have the two areas here. We have our pay data export import. That's our multi-tabbed pay data file. And then we have the pay item export import. That's our file that we just saw that looks just like our pay data, pay items tab here. All right. So that's one way to update your personnel scenario. Sometimes maybe you don't have a lot of turnover in your organization and you're just like, hey, I want to just do this in Martus. Well, we most definitely can do that. So our first stop is going to be on the positions page. Now, this is where you want to be aware of the difference between an employee leaving the organization and a position ending at the organization. So oftentimes people will look at this list and they will go, oh, well, Daisy isn't here anymore. Okay, that's totally, hopefully Daisy is moving to another area or something else great is happening for Daisy, but she's no longer the CEO. So we have a couple options. We are most definitely probably going to have another CEO at our organization. That's not really a position that normally gets just completely eliminated. So if it's vacant right now, we don't have one, we can come in and we can adjust the employee from Daisy to our vacant position, that placeholder position. The other thing we can do is we can come in and we can maybe the transition has already happened and I just need to update the person in here to our new person who has this position, right? So I can do that. A lot of times we'll see those people who are no longer with our organization though, and we'll just want to delete the position altogether. We don't normally want to do that unless, something has actually happened to really change that position. Like we are breaking that position into two, or we're not rehiring that position in that way, we're hiring it with a different title, anything like that, or the position itself is actually changing. That's where you may want to delete. Or every once in a while, you're like, okay, well, we're, moving all of these people into other jobs because we're not having, this type of thing at this location anymore. And so that would be another time where we would want to actually delete the position. For most of our turnover though, we are just swapping out the employee and potentially adjusting the salary or other benefits according to how that person has been rehired year over year. All right. All right. So I'm going to hit save on that. So Martus keeps those changes. And again, one of the things to be aware of is whenever we're working within a scenario, Martus is only ever going to edit and change that scenario. So anything I've done here on my scenarios page and these tabs is only affecting my 2025 base scenario. So in my 2024 base scenario, our CEO was our previous CEO. I don't remember who it was at this moment. And it's only in our 2025 that we have added Brock here. All right. Now, the other place we can go to adjust once we make sure we have all the positions we need. Oh, and we can copy a position. So like, let's say we need to add another counselor. So I'm going to edit the counselor who is in the right who is in the right location and department, because notice that our positions are booked to a worksheet. So I want to hire another general counselor. So I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click edit next to this. Now, Matt, what is the best way to create another counselor here?
I would use the duplicate button and then just edit a couple fields that I need to.
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise I'm going to have to go in and I'm going to have to add each one of these different pay items for my new person. And a lot of times when you're hiring, adding new positions, you're adding very similar positions to other things that you already have. So find one that's similar, copy it, and then make any changes you need. It will save you time in the long run. So I'm going to go ahead and click on duplicate. Tell Martus, yes, I would like to do that. All right. So now I have my new position. We can see that the position name, which we can't edit, but Martus added a different and a unique position name. So this is counselor 8 because we already had 7 counselors. I can adjust the counselor here. I can say this is an associate counselor, and now I can choose my employee. Maybe this is still a vacant position, so I'm going to choose that option. Our position type is still clinical. This is still a taxable position. It's still going to be a full-time person, though I could adjust that. Matt, do I want to normally put something in my start and end date here?
Not normally, because normally you would want to budget your position for the full year. You use the start and end date, you're saying my position is only going to run from, say, April 1st through the end of the year, or maybe it ends before December 31st.
Yeah, exactly. So in this case, especially since it's a new position, I could say, hey, we're not going to hire this until, let's just say, August. But normally for most of our ongoing positions, we would want to leave that blank so that Martus continues to budget year over year for that position. Because again, Martus is position-based and not employee-based. You're going to get so sick of me hearing that, or saying that, and hearing that, and hopefully it will stick with you at the end of the webinar. Now, we also have where we're booking this position. This is what I would consider their home dimensions or their base dimensions, and we can allocate those out in a next step. But this, you want to choose one. And a lot of times people are like, well, this person works 50% of the time here and 50% of the time somewhere else. They say, which one should I choose? And I'm always thinking, well, just flip a coin. It doesn't normally matter unless you're going to have non-admin users and personnel. In that case, you would want to make sure that you choose the dimensions that their supervisor can see so that the supervisor can see them in their scenarios. All right, then what we're also going to do here is, because this is just an associate counselor, we're going to bump down the salary because we actually started them at a lower rate. And so we're going to adjust that as needed. So I'm just going to hit save there. All right, and that's it. That's all we need to do. I'm just going to hit save again just to make sure. Now we have that counselor 8 in our list. Now, one of the things that you want to be aware of is if you're ever not seeing a change that you've made, go ahead and click load, and that will help. Where is counselor 8?
Wow, associate counselor.
Oh, it's associate counselor. Counselor. There it is. Counselor associate 1. I was looking for 8 and I lost it, but there it is. And you can see the start date there as well as everywhere it's booked. Now, one of the things I meant to show you that I forgot is, let's say we're like, okay, well, we actually want this person to be at location 403. Actually, let's do our 402 Travis County contract. It's a new contract. We're hiring this associate position for it. And I'm going to click save. And I'm going to get an error. Matt, can you tell me what this error means?
Sure. It means that you don't have an existing worksheet in your planner default budget for that worksheet. And so you're going to want to go add that.
Yep. So either I've made a mistake in my data entry here and they shouldn't be booked to 402, or over here in my planner, and I like to go to my worksheets page to show this, we can see here that we have 402 center, but we don't have 402 counseling. And that's what we've chosen here. We've got 402 100, and we don't have a worksheet for that in our planner budget. And so this is where we can click this newish add worksheet button right from here, and we could add that option. So that's a common error that we get a lot in our support desk is, I'm getting these errors saying a worksheet doesn't exist. And you either need to do like I'm doing right here where we're adding a new worksheet, or you want to come over and make sure that that's really where you wanted to book that person. that really should be their home dimension. Especially when we're doing imports, we often, mess up our ID as we're typing that in, things like that. So now if I hit save, I think I have to refresh in order for it to pick that up. Let's see if we can do it now. Let's see. I must have broken it. Let's see. 402-100. Any idea?
That's 2026. I think we're
That's
defaulting
why. So
2020.
that's one of the things that'll get us. So let's go back to 2025 and we'll add it there. So that actually once got me on it with one of our organizations, Matt, is that I did the same thing. I didn't note the year that we were looking at.
And that's where we could set our budget year and plan our setup to the year that we're working in.
Yeah, exactly. So if you missed last week's Watch Me Work, definitely check that out as Glenn walked us through how to do that. So now let's try hitting save and see if that works. Oh, look at that. It works when you add the worksheet to the right budget. So that's where using the right planner budget is very important. All right. Our next thing here that I want to show you is our pay items. Now, this is a newish tab for Martus. So if you are on our call today and you're thinking, I've never seen this before, chances are that is true. If you implemented more than like 6 to 9 months ago, this wasn't available. So you may not have seen it. So this is a great page though. You'll notice that this reminds us very much of that Excel document where I showed you with all the zeros on it. The difference here is that we are seeing each column. We're actually seeing how often they are calculating. We're also seeing any defaults that are there, and we have the ability to add hours and an amount in multiple columns at a time. So this is actually a really nice feature of Martus. If you don't have that many employees and you just need to make a few changes, this is a great way to do it. So let's say this facilities tech, we're going to move him to a salaried position. So I'm going to take this out and I'm going to put in the salary amount semi-monthly. And now I'm going to give him all of our salaried benefits. And notice that I'm just typing in the 0 there and tabbing over, and Martus is reading that as that default. All right, so we're good on that. And now all I have to do to save all of those changes, and I could change anybody else's salary if I needed to, and each cell that I change, Martus is going to highlight blue. Now, if I change it back to what it was before, like in this case, if I remove that option, notice Martus takes that highlight away because we're not actually changing anything. So I'm going to go ahead and hit save changes, and that will update all of our changes there. All right. So this tab is really nice if you're just trying to go in and add a bunch of things or adjust a few things. It makes it really nice that you don't have to export that pay item file and re-import. You can just make those changes quickly here in Martus. Now, the next thing I want to show you here is our detail tab. And we're going to select just our salary people here. And I'm going to click on OK. And one of the things that we often want to do is we want to add a mid-year increase. And so we can do that. What I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these records by clicking on the checkbox at the top. Notice that we have 33 items that are matching our criteria, and we can see that here on our screen. We also have 33 items selected. So it's very important to look at those before you make these kinds of changes and ensure that the numbers make sense. So now I'm going to click on update pay items, and you'll see here that I have the ability to start this in any month, but today we're going to do anniversary. So we are going to give a merit increase on their anniversary. And so I'm going to do a percentage amount, and we'll just do a 3% increase. So I'm going to click on update, and now we're going to take a look here. So our CFO, Caden, I'm going to click on the employee name here. So that's actually going to pull up their employee information, and I'm going to see their anniversary date is on 11/2018. So that's way over in November, and there is that increase that we're seeing on their anniversary. So we can see here this person's anniversary is in February. This person's looks like it's in March. And so we can kind of spot check those and make sure they make sense. All right. So our next thing I want to show you is our allocations. So I'm going to click into my menu here, and we're going to go to our allocations. And notice that we have our 2025 allocations already set up. So I'm going to go ahead and go to 2026 just to kind of show you the process here. So I'm going to copy our 2025 allocation and give it a new name, and we'll just call it 2026. Now, most of our organizations will just have one allocation per year. Matt, why would you need maybe 2 allocations per year?
If you want to experiment with allocating things to different, say, grants. That might be one example. We
Yeah,
do
that's
hard.
pretty much the main one. I can't
The only
usually
one,
think of
yeah.
more. So yeah, so most usually you want just the one allocation, unless like Matt just said, you're trying to see, what it looks like if you do get a grant or you don't get a grant, you get half the grant, or the grant says XYZ about your, who can staff that grant. But within your allocation, you want to add all of the things you're allocating, because you can only apply one allocation to scenario at a time. Now, one of my favorite enhancements that we've done in a while is we have now given you the option that once you create an allocation, you can set it as your default. And when you set it as your default, it will automatically be applied to your scenario when you are on the allocation analysis, and probably more importantly, when you are on the summary page. So you don't have to remember to associate the allocation before you post your summary out to your budget. So I always recommend create your allocation and then actually set it as your default. I'm going to come back into my 2025 scenario here. We're going to click on edit. Notice our two segments here. So this column here with the name, that's the name of our segment. And then these columns from employee on, those are how we're filtering what we're allocating. All right. So it's an important distinction to have in your head, the name of the segment and then what we're filtering. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new segment. I'm not adding a new allocation. I'm adding another segment within my main allocation here. And we'll do Devin here, and we'll hopefully have some matches. Let's see. Yep. All right. So these are all the lines that Martus is going to be allocating out, depending on how we've added our allocation targets at the bottom, but this is the total amount that we would be allocating. Now we can filter to other things. For example, we could filter and find all of the dollars that we are budgeting in personnel to facilities. And so when I show matches there, you can see that this is the entire facilities department. So technically I could allocate out the whole facilities department with one allocation. I don't necessarily have to do it by person if I'm allocating everybody the same way. But most of the time we are allocating by individual. So we will take this filter off. All right, so I'm going to name this segment. I often will name it by how I'm filtering. So if this was my facilities allocation, I would name it facilities. But since I'm filtering by Devin, we're going to name it Devin. And then down here at the bottom, this is where the actual allocations happen. What this is showing you is Devin's home department, or their home worksheet and grant. So we can see this person is already being booked to 100. So I'm going to add our new 402 counseling services worksheet, and we'll use the same grant. So you can see we don't have to change more than just one dimension. So in this case, the only thing we're changing is our 402 location from 401 to 402, and we'll put 30% here. And then it's very important to come all the way over to the right and find this little green plus button to actually add that row and that 30%. Now, Matt, do I need this number to be 100 down here?
No. Anything that you don't allocate down here will stay in the home dimensions.
Yeah, so we have another part of Martus called planner allocations where you do need it to match to 100%, but here you do not. So that's why we have those home dimensions. This is just to allocate out to anywhere else that that person needs to be allocated to. So we're going to go ahead and hit save on this. And then I'll show you here on my scenarios. And since we have time, I get to show you something else pretty cool. I'm going to reset this as my current. And here on my allocation analysis, I'm going to be able to see all of those different places. And notice that my allocation is already applied, my 2025 allocation. So if you love that as much as me, drop a comment in and I'll pass it off to our dev team about how much we appreciate that little enhancement. So I was trying to find our friend that we just allocated, but we can see everybody who is allocated here. There it is. There's Devin. Now you'll notice that we have italicized and unitalicized lines. The italicized is just showing us which one is considered that home department, what's on their position record. And the non-italicized lines are the ones that are being allocated out. So that's the only difference there. That's why one's italicized and one isn't. All right. So once we're done with all of that, we can come over to our summary tab and we can actually post this out to our budget. So this is a really nice way to be able to see different things. And that is this post to scenario budget. because a lot of times we'll create multiple scenarios, maybe one with a 2% increase, maybe a 3% increase. What happens if we, hire 2 positions versus 3 positions? And so you can make different scenarios for each one of those and post each one out to the scenario budget. And then you will have the ability to compare those with the planner side-by-side budget comparison. And then when you're ready to overwrite the numbers that are in your budget for these lines here, you can choose that budget. Now, Matt, what happens if in my budget, I have numbers that are maybe to, let's say, our full 1/3, where we don't have or we wouldn't have a worksheet. But let's say we have dollars in our budget somewhere where we don't have them here. What happens to those dollars in our budget?
They are going to be left alone. There's no match in the scenario. There's nothing for the scenario to update, and it won't be touched.
Yeah, so that's exactly what happens. And so it won't be touched. And so sometimes what happens is that we really didn't want those dollars still in our scenario or in our budget. And so this is where this newish budget lines feature can come in very handy. This is a place in Martus where you can come in and you can use our line mode here, and you can filter to all of your personnel accounts. And so this is where it's really nice to come in and go, okay, my salaries, my bonus, life insurance, you can select them all. We'll just select a few of them. And Martus is going to show you that across your whole budget. And then you can either zero out or remove all of these lines that may be copied in from last year's budget. Maybe you've changed especially for those of you who have a lot of grant or project changes from year to year. This is a really wise thing to do so that you know that you're starting from scratch with what's in your budget when you push your personnel scenario into that. All right. Now there is one more thing. Matt, this just got released yesterday morning. Do you know what it is?
I suspect you are referring to the custom spreads in the detail screen?
Yes. So
I just got to use that today myself.
yeah, I've been playing with it as I've prepared for this and another session I'm doing tomorrow. There is a place in Martus on your calendar called Custom Spreads. This is a feature that you can use in the budget widget as well, but I'm going to show it to you right now in our personnel. So you can see here how many days per month there are in each month. And so if I want personnel spread across how many days per month, because maybe that's how I allocate my actuals, or I could even do work days per month. I would just need to add another spread for that. I can then come into personnel budgeting and go to my scenarios. I'm going to come over to my pay items. Nope, I'm going to come over to my detail. Excuse me. All right, and we're going to select just our salaries, our pay hourly, and our salary. Now I could select everything if I wanted, but I don't want to do this to everything right now. So I'm going to select all of these. And notice that right now with our salaries, they're pretty even across all of the months, but that's not how we allocate because we actually allocate by day. And you can even see this person's salary is bumped because it's a bi-weekly pay type. And so we can see that bump in the months where there are 3 pay periods instead of 2. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on update pay items. Now you'll notice we didn't see, if you had eagle eyes and you can remember back there, we didn't see this custom spread option in the other system I was just in. And that's because there wasn't a custom spread set up in the calendar. So you won't see this unless you go do that in your system. But I'm going to come over here to custom spread and I'm going to choose my days per month. And I always recommend you click on preview because what this is doing is it's taking the total salary amount for the year. It's multiplying that by whatever percentage the 31 days of January is for the whole year of 365. So whatever the percentage of 31 divided by 365, we multiply that by the annual salary and we get that. So you can see that for, all the months that we have 31 days, you're seeing the 8153. You can see the slightly less number in February because we only have 28 days instead of 30. And so we can see that all of these are managing that. And even the one that is bi-weekly, we're seeing that same spread there. So this is a huge win. It keeps you from having to export to Excel and making those changes. So I'm going to go ahead and hit apply. And again, this is layered on top, just like our pay items, like our increases to their salaries, things like that. So it's layered on top, but it's going to be allocated across our year. All right. Well, we're winding down. I'm going to head back to PowerPoint. If you have any questions, throw those into the chat. We'd love to answer them for you. And in the meantime, we are going to talk about what's coming up. So next week, we are going to do our Fun with Report Builder training. I will tease that we are going to show you one of the coolest enhancements we have ever made, I think, at Martus during this training. You don't want to miss it. And we are so excited to show it to you next week and show you what's coming down the pipe. And then the week after that, June 24th, for those of us who are in the US, it'll be the early morning of the 25th if you happen to be in Australia. We are going to walk through our Martus basics for end users. Now, this is important to note. Your non-admin users who are in Martus, if they're not admins, they do not know about this end user training unless you've told them about it, because they don't see the notification updates on their home screen. We hide that from non-admin users, and we also don't email non-admin users. So the email you guys all got for this, they don't get. So unless they happen to stumble upon the upcoming webinars knowledge base page, they don't know about it. So if you want them to come to this, you want to invite them, send them the link. And we highly recommend it. If you have non-admin users in Martus getting ready to start their budgeting process, this is a great webinar for them to come to. We're going to keep it very basic, stay on the planner worksheets, walk through our budget widget, how to lock their worksheet, and then how to do some basic reporting in Martus. So it's a great, easy entry for them. And it's also a great refresher for a lot of us. All right. Well, that is what we have for today. I do hope you join us for the next couple of days, weeks, and thank you for being here this evening. Thanks, Matt, for all your help.
Sure thing. Thanks everybody for being here.